I woke up late, just like I always did on weekends. At my age, I had earned the right to take things slow. No bosses breathing down my neck, no deadlines, just the quiet rhythm of life in my own home. My house wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I had lived here for over 30 years, watched the neighborhood change, seen families come and go. The morning air was crisp as I stepped onto my porch, cup of coffee in one hand, a feeling of calm settling in my chest. That calm didn't last long. There was an envelope wedged in my mailbox, one of those thick, official-looking ones that never brought good news. The return address? Greenwood Village HOA. I already felt my blood pressure rising. These guys again? I muttered, ripping it open. I wasn't even part of the damn HOA. When the neighborhood started forming it years ago, I refused to sign up. I owned my house outright, didn't need anyone telling me what color my fence should be or how often to mow my lawn, and yet somehow they kept trying to sink their claws into my property. I unfolded the letter and scanned the first few lines. Then I read them again. Notice of property transfer. Dear Mr. Wilson, per the revised community guidelines and in accordance with our newly passed regulations, your property is now included in the HOA managed housing program. This will ensure efficient upkeep and cost-effective neighborhood improvements. Please visit our office within 7 days to sign the necessary paperwork for ownership transfer. I stared at the page. Ownership transfer? What the hell was this? I flipped through the next few pages. Legal jargon, fine print, references to bylaws I had never agreed to, but the bottom line was clear: they were trying to take my house. And they expected me to just walk into their office and hand it over like some fool? My hands clenched the letter. Oh, hell no. Without wasting another second, I grabbed my keys, stormed to my truck, and started the engine. I was going to that office, and someone was damn well going to explain this nonsense to me. The HOA office was in a small, well-maintained building next to a shopping plaza. The kind of place that looked welcoming from the outside, big glass windows, neatly arranged plants. But I knew better. Behind those walls were a bunch of people who lived for controlling others. I slammed the door of my truck shut and marched inside. A receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and the kind of polite smile that made my teeth grind, looked up from her computer. Good morning, sir. How can I help you? I dropped the letter on the counter. Yeah, I want to know what kind of scam this is. She glanced at the letter, then back at me, her smile not faltering. Ah, Mr. Wilson, your property was discussed at our last HOA meeting. I crossed my arms. Funny, I don't remember attending any meeting. Well, as a non-member, you weren't required to be there, she said, her tone polite but clipped. I scoffed. So let me get this straight. You had a meeting about taking my house and I wasn't invited? She sighed, tapping a few keys on her keyboard. It's not about taking your house, Mr. Wilson. It's about streamlining community management. With everyone under HOA governance, we can ensure uniform standards and cut the corporate talk. My house isn't yours to manage. She pressed her lips together and glanced toward the back of the office. Perhaps it would be best if you spoke with Mr. Rivers, our HOA president. Yeah, I think that'd be best. A few minutes later, a door opened, and out stepped James Rivers. I had never liked the guy. Mid-40s, always in a tailored suit, always acting like he was the king of this neighborhood. He had moved in 5 years ago and had been trying to tighten his grip on the community ever since. Ah, Mr. Wilson, he said smoothly, extending a hand. Glad to see you. I ignored his hand. Explain this. I jabbed the letter toward him. He took his time reading it, nodding like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Then he folded it neatly and smiled. It's all in the best interest of the community, I assure you. You think I give a damn about your community rules? I never signed up for the HOA. This, I held up the letter again, is a scam. Rivers sighed, his smile thinning. Mr. Wilson, let's be realistic. You're one of the last few homeowners not under our governance. Managing a neighborhood with outliers like you makes things complicated. This transition will be beneficial for everyone, including you. Beneficial? You want me to just give you my house? Not give, transfer. I laughed. And what do I get in return? The security of knowing your property is in professional hands, he said, as if he were doing me a favor. I leaned in. I built this damn porch with my own 2 hands. I fixed every leak, repainted every wall. My house is fine without your so-called professional hands. So let me say this real clear. I'm not signing a damn thing. Rivers tilted his head slightly, and for the first time the smile in his eyes disappeared. That's unfortunate, he said. Because this is happening, Mr. Wilson, with or without your signature. A chill ran up my spine, but I refused to show it. We'll see about that, I shot back. I turned and walked out, shoving the door open harder than necessary. As I stepped into the parking lot, I could still feel River's eyes on my back. And something told me this was far from over. I sat in my truck for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could still feel Rivers' eyes on me as I had walked out of that office. His words echoed in my head. This is happening with or without your signature. The arrogance. The sheer entitlement. They thought they could just take my home because it was easier for them? Like hell they would. I pulled out my phone and did what any sane man would do. I called a lawyer. Jackson Law Firm, how can I help you? Yeah, I need legal advice. My HOA is trying to take my house without my consent. The receptionist put me on hold for a moment before a voice came on the line. Mr. Wilson, this is Tom Jackson. What exactly is going on? I explained everything. The letter, the meeting I was never invited to, Rivers' smug face telling me my house was no longer mine. There was a pause on the other end before Jackson sighed. Listen, this isn't the first time I've heard something like this. HOAs pull stunts like this more often than you'd think, but they can't legally take your home without due process. If you never signed an agreement to be part of the HOA, they have no claim over your property. Have they tried filing anything against you? Not yet, just threats. Then they're hoping you'll fold. Do not, under any circumstances, sign anything. And if they try anything more, call me immediately. I thanked him and hung up. At least I had legal backup now. But something about the way Rivers had spoken to me made me uneasy. He wasn't bluffing. He thought he had already won. I drove home and parked, but before I could even step out of my truck, I noticed something. My trash cans had been knocked over, garbage spilled all over my lawn, not just tipped, ripped open. Coincidence? I didn't think so. I grabbed a shovel from my shed and cleaned up the mess, muttering under my breath the entire time. By the time I was done, I was too damn tired to think about anything else. I locked my doors, double-checked my windows, and went to bed. I woke up the next morning to something even worse. A bright orange violation notice was stuck to my front door. Unauthorized vehicle parking. Fine. $500, my truck was parked in my own driveway. I yanked the notice off and stormed back inside, grabbing my phone. I was done playing nice. Greenwood HOA, how can I assist you? Yeah, you can start by explaining why the hell I got a fine for parking in my own damn driveway. There was a pause before the voice on the other end, Rivers himself, spoke. Mr. Wilson, we take parking violations very seriously. All vehicles must be registered with the HOA to avoid improper appearances in the community. Improper appearances? It's my damn truck. I've been parking here for 30 years, which is exactly why we're transitioning to a more structured system. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. You know what, Rivers? Keep this up. Keep pushing me. Let's see who backs down first. I slammed the phone down. This was harassment, plain and simple. They were testing me, trying to wear me down with fines and petty intimidation. But I wasn't the kind of man to roll over. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the violation notice, then at my laptop. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. I pulled up my neighborhood's online forum. Everyone in Greenwood Village used it to complain about everything from bad lawn maintenance to noisy neighbors. But now it was going to be my weapon. I typed out a post. HOA is trying to steal my house. Who else has dealt with this? Hey neighbors, I just got a notice saying the HOA is taking ownership of my home without my consent. I never signed up for the HOA and now they're hitting me with bogus fines and harassment. If this has happened to anyone else, speak up. We need to do something. I hit post. Then I waited. 15 minutes later, the first comment came in. They fined me $1,000 for having a garden gnome in my yard. Thought I was the only one. Then another. They forced my mom to sell her house last year, said she violated neighborhood standards. And another. They tried something similar with me. I fought them and won. By morning, my post had over 100 replies. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger. And Rivers had no idea what was coming for him. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing like a hornet's nest. I groggily grabbed it from the nightstand and squinted at the screen. Notifications flooded in, emails, texts, comments on my forum post. I hadn't expected this much attention, but apparently my little war with the HOA had struck a nerve. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes as I scrolled through the messages. We've been dealing with this for years. They fine people until they give up and move. They towed my husband's car and then charged him to get it back. I tried to fight them in court, but they buried me in legal fees. The more I read, the angrier I got. This wasn't just about me. These people had been bullied into submission, forced to sell their homes, drained by ridiculous fines. And somehow Rivers had kept this under wraps. Until now. I got out of bed, made a strong pot of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table. If Rivers wanted a fight, I was ready. But I needed to be smart about this. The HOA had money, power, and influence. What did I have? Then it hit me. The media. I opened my laptop and typed out an email. Subject: Local HOA scandal. Homeowners being forced out. Hello, my name is Michael Wilson. I own a home in Greenwood Village, but my HOA is trying to take it without my consent. They've been harassing me with fines, tampering with my utilities, and intimidating me into signing away my property. I've since discovered that I'm not the only victim. Many of my neighbors have similar stories. This is systemic abuse, and it needs to be exposed. I have documents, community testimonials, and evidence of fraudulent activity. If you're interested in covering this story, please contact me. Regards, Michael Wilson. I copied every local news station I could find and hit send. I had no idea if it would work, but it was worth a shot. By noon, my phone rang. Mr. Wilson, this is Jessica Hayes from Channel 5 News. We saw your email. Are you available for an interview? Damn right I was. An hour later, a news van rolled up to my house. A blonde woman in a blazer stepped out, followed by a cameraman lugging a massive camera. She shook my hand firmly. Mr. Wilson, we appreciate you speaking with us. Can you tell us exactly what's been happening? I didn't hold back. I told them everything. The letter, the fines, the harassment. I even showed them the violation notice for my own driveway. The cameraman zoomed in on the bright orange slip. That's outrageous, Jessica muttered. Have you spoken to anyone from the HOA directly? I almost laughed. Oh yeah, Rivers himself told me this was happening with or without my signature. You ever hear something that shady? Jessica's eyes lit up. Do you have proof? I smirked and pulled out my phone. I record every conversation. Learned that trick after my divorce. I played back my last call with Rivers. His smug voice echoed through the speaker. Managing a neighborhood with outliers like you makes things complicated. This transition will be beneficial for everyone, including you. Jessica looked stunned. Mr. Wilson, this is huge. Can we run this on tonight's broadcast? Be my guest. That night, as I sat in my recliner, Channel 5 aired my story. The headline flashed across the screen. Local HOA accused of forcing residents out. Shocking recordings exposed. They played my call with Rivers. They showed my violation notice. They even interviewed a few other residents who had suffered at the HOA's hands. By the next morning, all hell had broken loose. Greenwood Village's Facebook page was in flames. The comment section exploded with outrage. This HOA has been running a scam for years. Time to take them down. How do we file complaints? Someone needs to shut them down. Michael Wilson is a damn hero. And then came the real victory. The city got involved. By noon, a representative from the mayor's office issued a statement saying they would launch an investigation into Greenwood Village HOA for potential fraud and unethical practices. Rivers? He wasn't smiling anymore. I knew because I saw him. Late that afternoon, he showed up at my house. No warning, no phone call, just knocked on my door like a damn salesman. When I opened it, he stood there, his usual slick confidence replaced with something else, thinly veiled desperation. Mr. Wilson, he said, his voice tight. Can we talk? I crossed my arms. Talk? You mean like when you told me this was happening with or without my signature? His jaw clenched. That was taken out of context. Sure it was. What do you want, Rivers? He exhaled sharply. We can fix this. Quietly. No need to escalate things further. I pretended to think. So now you want to negotiate? Funny how that works. Let's be reasonable. If you take down that interview, we can drop all fines against you. No more violations. You get to keep your house. I barked out a laugh. You think this is just about me? His patience cracked. You don't know what you're doing, Wilson. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. And you don't know who you pissed off. He gave me one last glare before turning on his heel and walking away. As I watched him go, one thing was clear. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up to something I never expected. Rivers was trending. News outlets picked up the story overnight. Local reporters were swarming Greenwood Village like bees to honey. My inbox was flooded with messages from journalists, lawyers, and angry homeowners who had finally found the courage to speak up. But the real bombshell dropped at noon. A city investigator, real official-looking guy in a dark suit, stood in front of a podium, reading from a prepared statement on live TV. The city of Greenwood has received multiple complaints regarding predatory practices within the Greenwood Village HOA. Effective immediately, we are launching a full audit of their financials and governing practices. Furthermore, all pending fines and property disputes will be put on hold until the investigation is complete. I nearly dropped my coffee. They were screwed. I walked outside, phone in hand, scrolling through comments on the news page. Finally, those crooks are getting what they deserve. They fined my grandma for having a flower pot on her porch. I hope they rot. Michael Wilson, you're a damn legend. I grinned. It felt good. Damn good. Then, as if on cue, I heard a car pull up in my driveway. I didn't even have to look. I already knew who it was. Rivers. Except this time, he wasn't alone. Two other HOA board members stepped out behind him, both looking nervous. Rivers, on the other hand, had that fake politician expression plastered on his face. Calm, composed, like he still had control. I leaned against my porch railing, arms crossed. "Boys, what brings you to my humble little outlier home?" Rivers cleared his throat. "Michael, I think we've had some misunderstandings." I smirked. "Oh? You mean like when you tried to steal my house?" One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Rivers forced a chuckle. "Look, things got out of hand. No one wants a legal battle. The board has agreed to drop all claims against your property. No more fines, no more letters, no more trouble." I raised an eyebrow. "And why would you do that?" He sighed, rubbing his temple. "Because this has become bigger than it needs to be. The media is watching. The city is breathing down our necks. We just want to move forward, quietly." There it was. He wasn't here because he wanted to make things right. He was here because he was scared. I let the silence drag out, watched him squirm. Then I leaned in just a little. "You're not going to have a board much longer, Rivers. The city's about to turn you inside out. Your quiet deal isn't worth a damn to me." His jaw tightened. "Michael, you really want to do this? You're making a lot of enemies." I grinned. Funny, I thought I was making a lot of friends. He exhaled sharply, glancing at his board members. They were already inching toward the car, jumping ship before it sank. Finally, Rivers nodded, his voice flat. "Fine, have it your way." He turned, climbed into his car, and without another word, sped off. 2 weeks later, Greenwood Village HOA ceased to exist. The audit revealed embezzlement, fraudulent fines, and illegal property seizures. Rivers resigned before they could throw him out, and half the board members followed. As for me, I kept my house. I kept my freedom. And every time I saw my name pop up in a news article about the man who took down a corrupt HOA, I just smiled, sat back on my porch, and enjoyed the view. Damn, that victory felt sweet.